Morning. Hi. Hello. Blessings to everybody. Aw, Dad's on, which probably means my mom is too. Hi, Mom and Dad. Well, I got up. I actually put makeup on this morning. I'm trying to look alive. I think I might look better than I feel right now. But I want to be authentic with you guys because you know, if any of you have had this, this virus can really take it out of you. And so, fortunately, I'm sleeping really good. But the downside is I don't want to get out of bed in the morning. I just want to stay in bed all day. So today is not one of those days. I have a lot to do. And so I'm just counting on God's grace to help me. And it's always an honor, though, to get to invest in you guys and just move forward together in what the Lord is speaking to our hearts. So, I read something this morning. It was an email from very good friends of ours who, Britt and Audrey Hancock. You've met Audrey on here before. She's my girlfriend from all the way back in grade school. And Audrey and Britt are also good friends of Johnny's and mine. They've been missionaries and they train missionaries. They also just officiated the wedding for our daughter, Justice, and her new husband, Chris, our son-in-law. And so they should be familiar to you. But I want to read to you something that it's a short email that they sent out. If you're not on their email list, it's always just very short, but very powerful what they have to communicate. And most of their series of emails are quick stories of miracles that God has done. And this one in particular today really caught my attention because it wasn't a miracle. I'm just going to read it to you, and I think it's going to be very encouraging to you right now. But it's called A Message from Britt Hancock About Suffering and Perseverance. And he says, first of all, quotes Romans 5:3-5. Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. And he goes on to say, we've been sharing so many stories lately of God's hand at work through our miracle series. I'm full of joy and faith because of it, yet I am so acutely aware of the unanswered questions and struggles we all face, both in the privacy of our hearts and the exposure of our communities. Suffering caused by disappointment, unanswered questions, and other people's cruelty are a tragic part of life on this earth. Yet how is it that we so readily give up? That our emotions are so fragile, our faith so reliant on this life's abundance? How is it that our belief in God's goodness is dependent upon our current circumstances? That we determine what type of suffering for Christ we're okay with? That we get to decide what a sacrifice of praise looks like? We recognize with our head, but not with our heart, that every child of God must walk through suffering. The children of Israel, King David, John the Baptist, even Jesus himself went through the wilderness. Yet so often we choose to believe that only certain kinds of deserts are acceptable. And along the way, if we do not immediately encounter shade, we believe we serve a cruel father. Yet a misunderstanding of the Father is what causes his servants to bury their talents and see no fruit. You got to hear that again. Yet a misunderstanding of the Father is what causes his servants to bury their talents and see no fruit. The ones who believe in his goodness take the risk. They invest, they go, they serve, and eventually they see a return. But it takes risk. Because without true risk, faith is not engaged to produce anything but the ordinary. Without true risk, faith is not engaged to produce anything but the ordinary. My family and I, and again, this is Britt Hancock speaking, my family and I have suffered beyond what many know or imagine. Our children have hung at death's door. We have been betrayed and maligned. We have seen all we sacrificed our lives for in Christ go up in flames. We have prayed and believed and sought and not found. But God. In the midst of true suffering, we stayed. We said, "You are good," even when His ways seem almost cruel. And we have seen God do amazing things. We've seen Him answer prayers in miraculous ways beyond our understanding. We've seen His goodness and abundant blessing. It's not because we are anything special. It's just that we went, we stayed, and we struggled to obey. I had zero confidence that God would use me. He's talking about when they went on the mission field themselves. I did not feel anointed or capable. In fact, I knew I wasn't. Yet God began to allow me to see and feel His use of Audrey and me and our small, innocent children. The one secret is don't give up. The law of averages is on your side. The only reason I've gotten to see what I've seen is because I stayed. When things were hard, when darkness closed in on every side, when I couldn't see, could barely breathe, could not believe He would move, we stayed. All of the miraculous stories would never have happened without having to struggle through the pain. No tools, strategies, or training can prepare you for the reality of suffering. In the end, you just have to lay down and die. And if you do, it unlocks the most extraordinary life. You tap into the vein of the Lamb that was slain. And you cease to care. Your hurt feelings don't matter, and the suffering cannot stop you. The suffering matters to God. He treasures every tear, but there is a place you can hide in Him where this life ceases to matter, where it cannot affect you, where you rejoice in sufferings, beatings, persecution, where your internal narrative of failure doesn't keep you from moving forward. All of the success stories we have came from a time when I was internally convinced that I was a failure. But that didn't stop me, and that never stops God. It is all about not giving up. And then he quotes Romans 8:18, "I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us." And he signs it, "Stay obedient and keep moving forward." The name of their ministry is Mountain Gateway, and I highly recommend that you go to their website, join their email list, stay connected with them. God is speaking powerful things through them both. And what really, so many things he said struck me, and I'll let them speak for themselves, but I heard this in my spirit afterwards, after I read it. First of all, that you are not a quitter. I just want to declare that over you. It doesn't matter what you feel. You are not a quitter. It's not an option to quit, right? It's not an option to quit. And it sounds silly coming out of your mouth anyway. It's like, I mean, I'm not even talking about like suicidal level. I'm just talking about that thing in us that just wants to like roll over and quit. You're not a quitter. Quitting is not an option. You were created for this moment in time. Literally, like this is just not some cute expression. You were literally dreamed up, thought up by your Father and put in this place in time and in history. You have a role to play that is important. And so we risk and we obey. And the kingdom comes where risk and faith intersect. The kingdom comes where risk and faith intersect. If the point of everything is the knowledge of God, God being seen for who he truly is. And yes, it's important that people know God. I mean, that's a given. Yeah, we want people to know God. So the knowledge of God filling the earth is about people knowing God. But I believe it's something even beyond that. There's something about in the spirit realm, the reality of us believing that God is who he is, that's even greater than people, as many people as possible knowing him. I know that could sound like, I don't know, something off about that. I'm not saying something I'm not saying. I believe this is about salvation and people coming to know Christ, okay? But there's something else that is happening in this understanding of the knowledge of God. So when we talk about risk and faith and stepping out, yes, we want to be motivated by how will that lead others to Christ. But there's also there's a message to powers and principalities when the sons and daughters of God risk and obey because we are so convinced that he is who he is. When we do not roll over and quit, and there's a lot of ways to quit. There are ways to quit where we just stop risking and we stop stepping out in faith and we stop believing that he is who he says he is. Even if your risk and your faith did not turn into something tangible in the natural on this side of eternity, it is extremely valuable. It is accomplishing something in the spirit realm, and the spirit realm supersedes the natural realm. As important as it is that things happen and take place in the natural realm, how much more so in the spirit realm? And I feel like encouraged to provoke our hearts to remember what matters the most is what we believe. And what we believe, we then take risk on and step out in faith on. And so ultimately, what are we risking for? What are we stepping out in faith for? We're risking our personal knowledge of God. Is he who we really think he is and hope that he is? You know, that's everything. In the parables where they were not good stewards over what was, the servant getting talents from the master or being left money to invest, each of those parables end kind of the same way with people misjudging the heart of the master who left them something to steward over. And what we've been left to steward over is the truth of who God is and how he is. So when we talk about showing up in culture and changing the world and representing him as a God who cares, we're basically saying, I'm willing to center my life around the kingdom, around this idea that he is who he says he is, and that he has better ways of doing everything because of his heart towards us. When everything around us can tempt us to believe that his heart isn't really about us and that he really isn't involved and he isn't taking care of us. So there's this statement that I often make, and I'll see if I can explain it. It's, I don't want to care more than God cares. But I also don't want to care more than God cares. Let me explain that. When you realize, you can use that statement to quit. You can also use that statement to move yourself forward. You can use it to quit because you assume he doesn't really care. I'm not going to care more than God cares, so why would I get involved? Or why am I going to put my heart out there? Why am I going to hope for something that he's going to let me down in, that I'm going to be disappointed about. You know, I don't care if you put your hope in something that doesn't come to pass. If it is anchored and rooted in the character and nature of God, it doesn't even matter because you believed what you could not see. And that is valuable in the spirit realm. And it translates to something powerful in the natural realm. And then we can use the same statement to move us forward. You know, I'm not going to care more than God cares. We can't. He does care. He does care. He does care. Therefore, we will care. His heart is fully engaged. So will we stay fully engaged too? He risked it all. Jesus moved forward when he didn't understand and he couldn't see the whole picture. If he can do that, how much more so will his followers? So this is your pep talk for today. I don't have a neat and tidy bow for it at the end, but the kingdom comes where risk and faith intersect. And the kingdom is evidence of the king's heart and how he governs and his heart towards his citizens of his kingdom, his sons and his daughters. So risk and faith. What does risk look like for you today? What does faith look like for you today? It's definitely not quitting. It's definitely not disengaging and just surviving and barely, processing what's going on around you. It's staying fully engaged in the face of contradiction and mystery and temptation to believe that he's not showing up for us. He's not involved. We choose love. We choose love in the face of fear. Fear is not the option. It's love every time. He loves us. He loves us. He loves us. And if we know that he loves us, then we can turn around and represent him correctly to those around us. All right. Now, I'm going to read just a little bit from the RISE Handbook. Speaking of Jesus as teacher, yesterday we learned that Rabbi is Rabbi. Rabbi. And we read several characteristics of God as teacher. I'm just going to pick up where we left off. I'm on page 106 in this handbook, if you have the book. Point number 4, God as teacher creates an atmosphere where we as his students each feel prioritized even over the curriculum. So when you look back and you think about things that God has taught you in your life, and you kind of take that aspect of him, that face of his as teacher, and you go, wow, okay, how did he relate to me as a teacher in my life and through things I was going through? He always makes us feel prioritized over the curriculum, whatever it is he's trying to teach us. And that's such a simple concept, but it's so profound. What he is trying to teach you is only important because you are important. Number 5, God as teacher builds in rewards for those with a hunger for learning. Scripture speaks of him as being the rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Proverbs 25:2 says, "It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter." This means he likes to hide things, and he considers it to be a royal attribute to be curious enough to search for what is hidden. He likes to hide things, and he considers it to be a royal attribute to be curious enough to search for what is hidden. You know, when your wiring is more as I want to be able to check something off a list and know that I've performed correctly. And usually you're that way if you're good at that kind of thing. So I kind of was. If I knew clearly in school what was expected of me, I really liked it. I liked to be able to just memorize something. I didn't care if I really understood it or not. I just wanted to be able to check it off that I had done it and that I had performed well, and someone recognized me for performing well. And the problem with that is that you're not actually learning something. And that's not who God is as teacher. God is not trying to just get us to be able to check something off. He already checked that thing off for us. Jesus, his righteousness is what assures us of our performance. So we don't have to perform. Now we are free to actually learn and grow, and not just have to pass a test for the sake of having passed a test. And so it's important to know this nuanced aspect of who God is as teacher. He loves to hide things. That means we have to meet that part of who he is with a curiosity, with a desire to dig deep and to want to stop and notice and be drawn into something and have that wonder and that curiosity that would lead us into searching something out. He's not always in the obvious, and I love that. And it can also be frustrating for people that don't get that part of who he is. And this is the last one I'll read today. God as teacher is not boring and predictable, but he rather loves to create an environment where curiosity is awakened. So he's not boring and predictable. He loves to create an environment where curiosity is awakened. It's just, that's amazing about him, because it seems kind of extravagant or maybe even irresponsible, the idea of just taking time for curiosity. But clearly, our education system, when it doesn't make space for curiosity, and you see it shift. It starts off in some schools, it's still there, kindergarten, maybe first, maybe second grade, and then it gets serious all of a sudden, and there's deadlines to be met of they have to make sure they've achieved this level of whatever by this point, and so there's no time for curiosity in the classroom. And by this time also you've got kids that are experiencing so much fear and trauma and pain from either life or home or something going on in the classroom with other kids, with the authority around them, etc. And then it's just back to that survival mode that we all found ourselves eventually in going through the education process. But I think that just these three simple truths would be so transformative for any education system, where the environment, first of all, is about the students being more important than what they're being taught, and about there being time for curiosity, for kids to actually search out things. I've been learning about this learning style from my friend Dr. Ivy Bonk, called, now I'm going to go blank on it, inquiry-based learning, and it's basically a learning style where teachers are taught how to draw curiosity out of the students and make time and conversation for kids to individually and then as groups discover things together and land on conclusions together, rather than just being spoon-fed. Here's the information. Now spit it right back out to me. Just memorize it. Obviously, there's some things that you do have to memorize, but very little in comparison to what can actually be discovered out of curiosity. And creating that environment in school settings where kids feel loved, they feel safe, and relationally it's not so complicated that they can't actually give themselves over to curiosity, etc. All right, I'm going to stop with that today, and we'll be back into that tomorrow. The song that I have for you today is called Keep Praying. Keep Praying. This is Maverick City Music, and the two singing on this song are Doe Jones and Ryan Ofei. Keep Praying, Maverick City Music. And remember that prayer is a conversation with the Lord, and obviously, if we're not quitters, we're not going to quit, and we're going to press into continuing to believe the goodness of God in the land of the living and display who He is and how He is, then conversations with Him cannot stop. We have to stay in conversation with Him, and that's prayer. And even when we don't understand something, especially when we're not sure that we, you get in touch with your heart enough and you're not sure that you like where this is headed and you're not sure you can trust where this is headed, all the more time to continue to risk that disappointment in maybe He's not going to show up the way I thought He was, and let go of your expectations and show up, and through our prayer time we continue to believe who He says He is. I believe that you are who you say you are, and I trust you, and you are good, and you do have a plan, and we may fail, but you never will. This is prayer. This is keep praying. And this is how generations before us got through the things they went through and received their reward in heaven, because they kept praying. So we do too. All right. I just bless you to have an awesome rest of your day, to stay. Don't quit. Stay. Stay, stay, stay. Hold the line, as they say. Alrighty. The author of Inquiry-Based Learning. I will get that information and tell you about it tomorrow. How about that? Because I know Dr. Ivy Bonk has told me about it, but she's learned about it through someone else, and I've gone blank on his name, the man that's really well known for that teaching. Anyway, all right, we'll see you tomorrow, you guys.